Welcome back to Nature Labs and our coverage of the 2025 Canadian federal election. The polls have closed in Newfoundland and Labrador and indeed across the Maritimes, and that means results are beginning to trickle in. Though I do mean trickle. The results we see here, of course, are not enough to determine the outcome of the election across the country, but they're also not the final results in the ridings that are even being shown right now. These are only ridings where the parties are leading in. Why is that, you ask? Well, it's because, of course, in every riding, there are multiple polling stations. Some of those polling stations account for a few dozen voters. Some of those polling stations account for thousands of voters. So, of course, it's going to be much faster for the smaller polling stations to report their data quickly, which means we get their information first. But the bigger polling stations, the more robust data that's required for a media outlet to call a riding for one party or another, it takes time. We're only human after all, and it takes a while to tabulate votes in a fair and democratic way, of course, as is the way in our Canadian elections. So that means these results should be taken with a grain of salt because the data set that the media outlets are displaying right now isn't sufficient to call a riding for one party or another. But as that data comes in, as the data becomes so significant that the results are very clear, of course, that's when media outlets begin to call ridings definitively for one party or another, and that's when we begin to see a better sense of how the outcome in Atlantic Canada will mean for the electoral outcome for the nation as a whole. And of course, when it comes to Atlantic Canada, we often gloss over it, and we shouldn't. As we've talked about before in Nature Labs, Atlantic Canada is a critical component of the whole of our nation. It's not a bit player. It has an important and vibrant economy, of course, ranging from fisheries traditionally and increasingly to industries like the oil and gas industry in Newfoundland and Labrador. Those issues are at the forefront of voter minds. Of course, other issues like the trade war with Donald Trump and cost of living issues also matter, as does the environment. And people might not be voting on the environment itself, but of course it'll be how the environment interacts with the economy and the important decisions our nation needs to make that will trickle down into the minds of voters in helping them weigh policies of different parties and determine ultimately who they'll cross that X for on the ballot for the party that they choose to support. So the environment, Atlantic Canada issues, economic issues, all at the forefront of the mind of voters, and we'll see what candidates the Atlantic Canadian voters decide to back and how that will influence the final shape of Parliament as the results continue to come in.